And to going to meditation retreats really fucking just transformed me, to be honest with you. And that's because when I was meditating, I was observing my traumas, observing my pain, right? Because when you sit and meditate, you feel uncomfortable. And the more you sit, the more uncomfortable you feel. But what the problem is that those intense, uncomfortable emotions, the brain has to find those emotions. And so the brain says, okay, where are these intense emotions at? And so it reaches down to your childhood and brings them to the present moment and says, you know what? Let me use this high, intense pain from childhood, because right now, he's been sitting for 3 hours and the frustration he feels does not fit 3 hours. So we got to find some pain from the past. And so you start feeling uncomfortable and think that you feel uncomfortable because you're meditating for a long time. But what really you're doing is that your brain is recruiting memories from your past and using them to allow you to experience the uncomfortable of sitting for 3 hours. But now you're doing it in a meditative way and you're relaxing and observing it. And you may not see it as pain from the past, but what you're doing is that you're observing it and you're actually learning to let go and
like a boss.
On the ethical front, few of us will ever admit that we have resorted to deception or manipulation in our work, or have been clever and strategic in our career advancement. Everything we've got, or so we think, comes from natural talent and hard work. But with other people, we are quick to ascribe to them all kinds of Machiavellian tactics. This allows us to justify whatever we do, no matter the results. We feel a tremendous pull to imagine ourselves as rational, decent, and ethical. These are qualities highly promoted in the culture. To show signs otherwise is to risk great disapproval. If all of this were true, if people were rational and morally superior, the world would be suffused with goodness and peace. We know, however, the reality, and so some people, perhaps all of us, are merely deceiving ourselves. Rationality and ethical qualities must be achieved through awareness and effort. They do not come naturally. They come through a maturation process.
yeah, that's the part, right?
Step 2.
A lot of people never mature. A lot of people stay stunted. A lot of people, they become even more immature. And it seems like, from what I'm getting from this book, the more unconscious biases you have, I'm not talking about unconscious bias like liberals talk about. You have an unconscious bias, and I know you, and that's why you're racist, but you just don't know you're racist. But I can see it. I clearly see you're racist, but you can't see it. So you gotta listen to me because you have an unconscious bias. The fuck? What kind of gaslighting bullshit is this? We're not talking about that, okay? We're not pointing fingers here. This is all about pointing to ourselves. This concept is here, not there. So the unconscious bias is me talking to myself. You have your own unconscious bias. And the more you grow, the more opinions you hold on to, the more tribal you get, the more unhappy you are, the more lonely you feel, the more defensive you feel, the more unconscious biases you're going to create. And one of the best ways to identify your unconscious biases is just to develop a meditation process, people. Develop a meditation process. Have a daily meditation practice. Observe your thoughts. Observe your emotions. Observe your reactions. You're going to recognize your biases that way. The more observant you are of your inner emotional state, the more conscious you will be of this, because it's a very insidious thing. It's insidious. It's quiet. It's slippery, right? Your biases might be looking at you right in your face and you might not be aware of it. That's how slippery they are.
Beware the inflaming factors.
So there's another chapter.
Low-grade emotions continually affect our thinking, and they originate from our own impulses. For instance, the desire for pleasing and comforting thoughts. High-grade emotion, however, comes at certain moments, reaches an explosive pitch, and is generally sparked by something external, a person who gets under our skin or particular circumstances. The level of arousal is higher, and our attention is captured completely. The more we think about the emotion, the stronger it gets, which makes us focus even more on it, and so on and so forth. Our minds tunnel into the emotion, and everything reminds us of our anger or excitement. We become reactive. Because we are unable to bear the tension this brings, high-grade emotion usually culminates in some rash action with disastrous consequences. In the middle of such an attack, we feel possessed, as if a second limbic self has taken over.
Yeah, I remember like even when I was really smoking weed when I was younger, I would just like obsess. Like I will get obsessed with weed. It's like a craving, like literally any craving, right? Where you're the frustration of the day, you're tired, you're stressed, and all of a sudden the fantasy of smoking weed gets into your mind. And it doesn't stop. And even though you're broke and you have $3 in your bank account, you just start thinking more of the weed, and it starts to take over your mind, and you start doing anything for it. I used to donate plasma to get weed. You might even see it here, people. I used to donate plasma. Plasma is like, things you donate it, and you get money for it, but it also helps people. But a lot of people who do that are buying drugs with it, right? I was buying weed with it. And I remember when I was giving my blood, I'm like, oh, I need to get out of here, man. Man, I sound like a crackhead, people. Oh my God, it's a fucking crackhead. I knew it. And it made me do rash things like that, right? Donating money for my blood. I mean, for my plasma to get weed. That's insane, I've known people who would travel across the world just to bang a girl, right? Because they're obsessed with her, right? You want to see this girl so badly that you're willing to go broke just to see her. You're inflamed. And so you start making irrational decisions. So those irrational decisions are horrible decisions at the cost of yourself, right? And that's why knowing yourself, i.e. being aware of these biases, is an end in and of itself, because by just being aware of this, it literally liberates you. Just being aware of it is the first step of liberation. And this happens a lot even with parents who hit their kids too much. The kid pisses them off and they get so angry that they start abusing their child, and they may not even notice that. And partners do that. And it's just, even a deep desire for money and fame causes people to start doing things they usually wouldn't do for it. They may start sucking a dick. I don't fucking know, right? Or doing something else. But the point is that deep, intense desire for something is also a bias. It's actually one of the biggest biases. In fact, deep, intense desire is one of the biggest corruptors of humans. Deep desire for power, deep desire for fame, deep desire for money causes people to corrupt their values and start doing things that they usually wouldn't do. And over time, their actions will become part of their identity, to the point that they won't see how outrageous their actions are.
It is best to be aware of these factors so that you can stop the mind from tunneling and prevent the releasing action that you will always come to regret. You should also be aware of high-grade irrationality in others, to either get out of their way or help bring them back to reality. Trigger points from early childhood. In early childhood, we were at our most sensitive and vulnerable. Our relationship to our parents had a much greater impact on us the further back in time we go. The same could be said for any early powerful experience. These vulnerabilities and wounds remain buried deep within our minds. Sometimes we try to repress the memory of these influences, if they happen to be negative, great fears or humiliations. Sometimes, however, they are associated with positive emotions, experiences of love and attention that we continually want to relive. Later in life, a person or event will trigger a memory of this positive or negative experience, and with it a release of powerful chemicals or hormones associated with the memory. Take, for example, a young man who had a distant, narcissistic mother. As an infant or child, he experienced her coldness as abandonment, and to be abandoned must mean he was somehow unworthy of her love. Or similarly, a new sibling on the scene caused his mother to give him much less attention, which he equally experienced as abandonment. Later in life, in a relationship, a woman might hint at disapproval of some trait or action of his, all of which is part of a healthy relationship. This will hit a trigger point. She is noticing his flaws, which, he imagines, precedes her abandonment of him. He feels a powerful rush of emotion, a sense of imminent betrayal. He does not see the source of this. It is beyond his control. He overreacts, accuses, withdraws, all of which leads to the very thing he feared, abandonment.
Yeah, it's kind of honestly one of the most embarrassing things that I have is that when I was younger, when I would date women, I pushed a lot of them away with my fear of rejection. Like I could clearly feel myself being more at ease with myself. And now, oh my God, it's kind of crazy, people. Like now, it's like, this is just for the sake of the video. Now, women just are just obsessed with me, and I really think it's because they sense that I'm not as like cold as I used to, because that's the impression that I used to give people. But now they say I'm sweet. Like, for example, like I'm dating this girl from years ago, and she tells me, "Wow, Alexis, like you are completely different. You are so much sweeter than before. It's kind of insane." Like she tells me that, and even the way I look at her, she says it's just much more calm. And those things happen. I'm like that now because I've learned to heal myself. I'm not gonna lie. Going to that meditation retreat, and to go into meditation retreats really fucking just transformed me, to be honest with you. And that's because when I was meditating, I was observing my traumas, observing my pain, right? Because when you sit and meditate, you feel uncomfortable. And the more you sit, the more uncomfortable you feel. But what the problem is that those intense, uncomfortable emotions, the brain has to find those emotions. And so the brain says, okay, where are these intense emotions at? And so it reaches down to your childhood and brings them to the present moment and says, you know what? Let me use this high, intense pain from childhood, because right now, he's been sitting for 3 hours and the frustration he feels does not fit 3 hours. So we got to find some pain from the past. And so you'll start feeling uncomfortable and think that you feel uncomfortable because you're meditating for a long time. But what really you're doing is that your brain is recruiting memories from your past and using them to allow you to experience the uncomfortable of sitting for 3 hours. But now you're doing it in a meditative way, and you're relaxing and observing it. And you may not see it as pain from the past, but what you're doing is that you're observing it and you're actually learning to let go and accept it. And then through the meditation process that they teach, after 10 minutes of that of feeling that frustration, you actually notice that the emotion changes and you feel good. And then you're like, oh my God, like I don't feel uncomfortable anymore. But now you don't notice that you just healed. You allow yourself to overcome that emotion by observing. And that's the power of meditation, that it resurfaces intense pain because you're uncomfortable sitting down for so long, and you're observing it and you allow it to let go over time. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, this is just a short version of the Robert Greene Book Club. Click on the description down below and become a Robert Greene Book Club to watch the full video. It's actually a 30-minute video. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, and I'll see you guys next time. And let me know what other chapters of Robert Greene's book do you guys want me to make, and I'll post it.